Hey, fifth grade, it's Miss Tatum. So today we are going to be focusing on the skill of making inferences and finding evidence to justify our inferences from the text. We're also going to be using our knowledge about central ideas to find supporting evidence within a nonfiction text. So let's go ahead and get started. So we first need to decide what an inference is and remember what an inference is. So an inference combines two different things: clues or details from the text and what we already know. When we combine these two things, we can make an inference. For example, in this picture, we can see that something happened with a cat. Well, some clues and details that I see in the picture is that there's a glass that's knocked over, the cat's eating a fish, and I'm going to combine that with things I already know about cats. Well, I know that cats like to eat fish, so based off the details and clues I see in the picture and what I already know about cats, I can make an inference or draw a conclusion that the cat probably jumped up on the table, knocked over the fish bowl in order to eat the fish. We're going to use these same ideas when we're making inferences in a text. It's just going to be a little bit more complex. We are going to be using a text that I used to model on Monday. This text I'm going to use again to model making inferences. So the title of the text was "Don't Blame the Rats for Spreading the Black Death." I just want to give you a reminder about what this text was about since we didn't read the entire thing. In this text, the author is giving us information and trying to persuade us that rats weren't actually the reason for spreading the Black Death. It was humans. So we're going to be using parts of this text in order to make inferences. So let's go ahead and get started with the first step. When we are asked questions on a quiz or a text or while we're reading, we need to decide whether a question requires literal or inferential thinking. We are going to start by deconstructing what a literal level question is. So a literal level question, those are stated directly in the text. Sometimes we are asked to identify the best evidence to support a claim. If it's a literal level question, the evidence in the text is going to directly support the claim. The reader is not going to have to draw a conclusion. We only draw conclusions about something on an inferential question. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here's an example of a literal level question. An example is, how does the author support the claim that the Black Death was one of the deadliest disease outbreaks in human history? I first need to think what the claim is. So the claim is that the Black Death was one of the deadliest disease outbreaks in human history. I am now going to try to find evidence, and I already know that this is a literal level question. So there's going to be evidence that directly supports this. It's going to use words that I see in the question, and it's going to be explicitly stated in the text. I'm going to show you an example of that next. As you can see with the underlined evidence, the text states the Black Death was one of the worst disease outbreaks in human history. So the claim can be supported with evidence that is stated directly in the text. I don't have to draw a conclusion. I can see that the evidence directly supports the claim that the Black Death was one of the deadliest disease outbreaks in human history. Therefore, this is a literal question, not inferential. But what does an inferential question look like? We will get to that later. I'm going to go ahead and show you another example of what a literal question might look like and an example of what you might be asked on your exit ticket. Typically, in a literal level question, you are going to see that the claim is already stated, and you need to go find evidence that directly supports that claim. Within the evidence, you are going to see words or ideas that directly support the claim. It is going to be explicitly stated in your evidence. For example, what evidence best supports the claim that human fleas and unclean living conditions were the most responsible for the spread of the Black Death rather than flea-carrying rats? So again, I need to think, well, what is the claim? Well, I can see that the claim here is that human fleas and humans' unclean living conditions were responsible for the spread of Black Death, not rats. So, after reviewing all the answer choices, A explicitly states and supports the claim. A states environmental conditions that allowed rats, fleas, and lice to spend so much time around people would have played a larger role in spreading the disease. It states here and directly supports the claim that human living conditions were responsible for the spread of the Black Death, not rats. So, I hope this helps when you are deciding whether a question is literal or inferential. I want you to remember that a literal level question is not going to have you draw a conclusion. It's going to be directly stated in the text. I am now going to show you what an inferential question might look like and some clues that can help you determine whether a question is inferential or literal. So, some clue words that might help you decide whether a question is literal or inferential are words like conclude, infer, suggest, or illustrate. When you see these words in a question, a light bulb should go off in your head that you know you are going to need to make an inference. So there are 3 steps that I'm going to follow when answering an inferential level question. So, 1, you need to think, what is the claim I am trying to prove? What evidence supports this claim? And your thinking is going to sound like this. If the text says this, then it might mean blank. I'm going to show you what this looks like with a model using the model text. So here's a practice question. I want you to go ahead and read it with me. What conclusion can you draw about how the spread of disease could have been prevented? Well, I already know that this is an inferential question because the question is asking me to draw a conclusion. So now I'm going to stop since I already know that it's an inferential question, and I need to think, what is the claim? So the claim is that there is something that could have prevented or stopped the disease from spreading. We need to go back in the text to find evidence to prove this. So, what evidence supports the claim? I'm going to go back to the text and look, but I'm going to go ahead and have you pause the video, and I'm going to try to have you find evidence within this little section that proves the claim about how the spread of the Black Death or the disease could have been prevented. So, there are 2 sentences worth of evidence. So the claim is that there's something that could have prevented the disease from spreading. Well, the text states environmental conditions that allowed rats, fleas, and lice to spend so much time around people would have played a larger role. Until modern times, he notes, people were gross. So I have to think, if the text says that environmental conditions allowed the spread of the disease and that people were gross, I have to draw the conclusion, and I'm thinking that cleaner living conditions can stop people from getting infected by animals and insects that have the disease. So, effective readers know they must find evidence in the text to support a claim. For an inferential question, we must focus on keywords in the question so that we know what we are being asked. We must go back to the text and make a claim and find evidence to support it. 3, we must evaluate the answer choices based on the claim and evidence you have already found and justify your answers using keywords. What that means is you need to explain how your evidence supports the answers you've selected, and you're going to be asked to do this on your exit ticket. Here is an example of a question. So, what conclusion, right? A light bulb should go up on our head. We're going to have to make an inference. What conclusion can you draw based on the relationship between humans' cleanliness and preventing the spread of the disease? Well, I've determined that D is the right answer choice, that cleaner living conditions can prevent humans from coming in contact with infected animals and insects carrying diseases. And my evidence was, instead of environmental conditions that allowed rat, fleas, and lice to spend so much time around people would have played a larger role, until modern times, he notes, people were gross. Therefore, my evidence shows that if people weren't gross, the disease would not have spread as fast. My evidence supports my claim and my answer choice. So I want to stamp, my evidence supports the claim because it shows the relationship is that cleaner conditions can prevent humans getting the disease because they won't be around pests and animals. So you read this text, the explainer, what is the plague, on Monday. You are going to read it again because you will be asked to make inferences and draw conclusions about